Right, so because I'm not quite satisfied with the examples I was able to make for my upcoming video related to rebuilding old battery packs, namely because I could not rebuild the battery packs for my 90s laptops on account that they still work, and it's kind of a waste to rebuild them when the original batteries are still functional, and I'd sooner use them up before like taking them apart and replacing the cells. I've decided that I've bought something else that would allow me to build a type of battery that's missing in my demonstrations, which is the nickel metal or the nickel cadmium type battery. If I can get that thing to work, which by the way is a much older equivalent of this, as a hint. So in the meantime, I've decided to show that this channel is not dead again. I'll do these quickly put together shenanigans videos where I do repairs or whatever that people usually don't seem to talk about or even think about on account that it's probably very stupid. In this case, printers. This is a Canon bubble jet, color bubble jet, BJC-50v. This is the Japanese version of the BJC-50, which is a more portable oriented model of the BJC-80 color bubble jet printer, in that it omits the automatic sheet feeder, which makes it smaller, but it does include a built-in battery, or it comes with a battery right from the get-go, so it can be used with a laptop on the go. So this is better for laptop use, because on the BJC-80 you need to get the battery cradle that sticks to the ass end of the thing to be able to use it on the go. And since that uses nickel metal batteries, I don't think it lasts as long as this one. So amusingly, the Japanese version brands itself as a Wonder BJ, which is very funny. So, well, as with modern printers today, these printers already have the stupid waste tank counters. Because the problem with inkjets is they had to purge ink regularly whenever the printer's washing machine decided to have a tantrum. Right, where was I? Like with any inkjet printer, they have to constantly purge the ink out of the head to maintain a supply of fresh ink on the head in order to produce reliable prints. And as it purges, it has to dump that ink somewhere. The older bubble jets, like the one that I'm getting, they don't have a stupid counter. It'll just start getting messy when the waste pads get full. This one implements that stupid feature because, as we all know with these waste tank counters, it's what kills most printers. Because when the counters run out, it'll be like, oh, you cannot print anymore. You have to take it to service center. Problem is, there's no service center who'll service this anymore, so I'm the service center now. Fortunately for the American models, you can reset this, or rather the international models, you can reset this with just the printer itself. It's detailed in the service manual. You just have to do some funky thing with the resume and supplying power, and then you can set the waste tank counters there. If you want details, you have to consult the service manual. You can find them on the internet. Actually, the Canon service manuals for the printers are really cool because they have a theory of operation explaining how the printer actually operates. The Japanese version, however, is different. It seems you need the service software for it, because I can bring it to service mode, but I can't do anything else other than engage endless head cleaning cycles. So what I have to do is I have to actually take the EEPROM chip out and then dump the contents and then do another dump after the waste tank had finally been used up, and then I did a comparison. Of course, because I'm Asian, I keep these details a trade secret because that's what Asians tend to love doing when it comes to technical fields like this. But nonetheless, there's a 62-byte data structure that's repeated 3 times across the ROM, and there are 4 bytes that have to be zeroed out. There might be more bytes that need to be zeroed out, but the picture I'm showing right now, the drawing should explain exact everything that's needed to be done. Really, where was I? I lost track. Yeah, that's how I had to reset this thing, which incidentally it also disables the annoying the ink cartridge usage counter, which is nice. The international versions doesn't have that stupid feature where the printer constantly whines about the low ink cartridge. Evidently was found to be annoying to found to be very annoying to Japanese users. So they got rid of that in the international model. It's apparently a setting you can turn on and off. I cannot find a user manual for this. Not even a Japanese manual. Not even a service manual. Completely no documentation for the Japanese version whatsoever. But yeah, first thing to do. But another problem that occurs when a printer gets used a lot is it begins to get messy. I distinctly remember seeing this with our first inkjet printer, which incidentally was a Canon. It uses the BC-20 cartridge and a BC-21E cartridge, or something a little later, but similar to this, similar to the cartridge of this, only bigger, with bigger ink cartridges. So the first thing to do is I need to get the ink cartridge out. My stomach's not feeling very good. So put it in cartridge mode, cartridge replacement mode. The cartridge out. I don't have a storage container for this, so it'll just dry out in the open. But it's easy to soak it up anyway. There's nothing to worry about. Then I want the carriage to be out of the way of the purge unit, because the problem when the printer gets used up heavily, it gets really messy, especially around the purge unit. So what technicians often didn't do when they reset the printer is they don't replace the waste pads. They don't even clean the printer. Although the Canon sanctioned service data would tell you to just replace the whole printer assembly, which by that point is probably best to just replace the whole printer. I tend to get lost with a not so pleasant feeling gut. But yeah, waste tank reset. Very stupid function of inkjet printers, really. I don't understand why they have to do this. Maybe it's to prevent the printer from making a mess. Then, yeah. Luckily, I was able to do it. Anyone with a technical enough brain can also do it themselves. Washing machine's finished. So what I'm gonna do here is, since I've already reset this printer, since I used it up from all that ink testing work, is very tedious to make refills suitable for an older printer, by the way. So be prepared to spend a lot of time and a bit of money on chemicals that are sometimes a bit toxic. So yeah, I forgot to explain why I'm doing this. I think it's hard to keep track, especially with a drowsy brain. I decided to do these random ass videos that will be called under the LameJunk brand. Again, LameJunk used to be Lame Bits. I used to do something like this once. It was called Lame Bits. Yeah, that's the waste, the money absorption pads, and not sure if it can be seen very clearly. Yeah, it's just dark. I'll just go handheld mode after I've taken apart printer enough. But the problem when the printer gets used a lot is the ink begins to creep into where the paper is gonna travel. That's why a heavily used printer, it tends to leave spots of ink along the edges of the paper. It especially happens on HP desk jets. Yes, I did repair some HP desk jets, even though HP officially just throws the printer into the garbage when you send it in for servicing, instead of actually repairing. So yeah, the EEPROM chip to be dumped and fiddled with is is over here. It's underneath the connector for the optional ASF50 waste automatic sheet feeder. So yeah, LameJunk or LameJunk. It'll be like side videos, really, where I detail certain things that are that don't sit well with turning into a mainline video. So I'm gonna do these kinds of videos to show that this channel is not dead yet. when I'm not, and I'm still working on a mainline video. So yeah, the relevant EEPROM is right over here. It's a 2 kilobit EEPROM chip. It can handle up to 1,000,000 rewrite cycles. So it's not quite a ferroelectric memory. So what I'm doing is I'm separating the bottom assembly and the top assembly. The bottom assembly is where there are two halves to this mechanism: the bottom base assembly and then the top print assembly. So when I get the two pieces apart, I'm gonna go handheld mode. Get your vomit bags ready. We'll do handheld. But these big ENG oriented cameras are not very good at macro, so close-ups are gonna be a bit meh. But the smaller camera, the smaller single sensor cameras are better at macro. But with a smaller sensor, they're not as good at low light. As far as I know, I think I'm the only one who really does this kind of thing. And yes, so I did repair desk jets at school, because in this country our time is worth less than the printer. So we actually try to fix printers if we can. There are even shops dedicated to it. So get the board out because it blocks the screw to the but yeah, using a obsolete printer is a bit crappy really, because you have to spend a lot of time formulating your refill, and also a bit of money on the materials needed to formulate an ideal suitable refill, because older inkjet inks are much less viscous. They're thicker, and I have a feeling you can get the sharpness down with additives such as ethylene glycol and glycerin, and adjusting the pH with the triethanolamine. Maybe that'll be something I will do for the next LameJunk, is formulating inks for these shitty old printers. Because who the fuck does this kind of thing? Because people into old computers are just in it for the games. They don't use these computers for office stuff, even though that was what these computers were designed for originally. Remarkably, Canon printers are quite easy to service. Okay, I think I have to take the bottom cover down off. Be careful not to rip the ribbon cable for the paper exit switch. Take that out. And also another reason I have paper here is because ink will get on the surface. So yeah, there's the printer nappy there. That whole thing used to be white. Now it's all black. And that's the part I need to clean up. This also happens even after sending a printer to the service center, at least from my experience growing up, because the service technicians, what they did is they just performed the reset, but they never cleaned the printer. Not even attempting to, oh, you're supposed to clean and replace the waste pad, but a lot of the time they don't do that. They just reset and give the printer back. There's another catch there. Yep, we already get stains coming out. I think it wasn't. I forgot. Yeah. That phenomena where when the printer gets used up a lot and it begins to ink, it's already happening on this one. Okay, at least looks like you have to turn it over. What the service manual calls for is to replace the whole bottom assembly or the top assembly when it gets too dirty. At that point, may as well just buy a new printer. I have a bad feeling I cannot take the... And also, yeah, I forgot to mention earlier, working with a inkjet printer is gonna be messy. So watch out. And working with inkjet inks is also gonna get messy. Okay, I got the base assembly, bottom assembly out. It turns out the head carriage had to be in a parking position so that the gearing will move. Also, this is not detailed in the service manual at all. The ribbon cable for the print head runs under the carriage. So now we can see what I'm talking about with ink going all over the place and staining prints. See the wet spot here? That's ink. That's the cap unit. The rubber blade that wipes, the wiper blade there. Can't really do... Oh wait, if I were a Westerner, I would have to like turn shadows in this video into like mosaics. People are that scared apparently. Wow. But yeah, see those wet spots there? That's ink. And that's what happens when a heavy duty printer had been used up a lot. It gets rather messy. Turns out I still have to clean the top assembly a little bit. Maybe splash some water to get the ink off. But most of the mess stays in the bottom assembly. The Canon service data insists just replacing this whole bottom assembly, but we can't exactly do that unless I have a dead BJC-50 to part out. So seems mostly this part's what I need to clean off. Also need to remove the switch. So yeah, and the best solution for cleaning these ink stained parts out is with water. That one's not ink, that's my sweat droplet that landed there some time ago before my dad nagged me to help him with his plumbing work. These rollers are a bit crusty too. I have to wonder what previous life this printer had, really. But it certainly spent more time using the black ink cartridge than the color one. Also, another reason people don't bother with inkjet printers, especially something this old, is because they think it's impossible to recover a dried up head. No, it's possible. You just have to sit it on a piece of tissue paper soaked with distilled water and let it sit there for a while. That's exactly what I did to get this one going. But the problem is getting refills, really. Supposedly Ink Owl still makes refills for this kind of cartridge, but sooner just formulate my own, as I can at least control it, to manipulate it to near perfection if it's even possible. Well, before I end this part, I already took out the waste pads for cleaning, if I can even clean it. There's so much of that shit down here. There were like 3 layers of pads here. And then there's this buffer sponge for the pump. But yeah, these older inkjets, they actually have a mechanical pump thingy here. That's the head cap and purge pump. If I turn this, can be seen the little piston there. Also, I need to take that out and inspect. Make sure the gasket's still good. But yeah, the waste pads are completely blacked on this. I'll show that at the end. Damn, this thing, also I sound a bit staggered. Hung up doing handheld with an ENG camera because, oh my god, it's actually quite heavy. Yeah, maybe it's probably better to get a smaller HDV camera for this shit, because this thing is actually heavy to one hand. Completely black. This one seems to have developed a layer of ink paste. Yeah, it's actually quite big, the waste tank for this printer, and it's completely used up. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna immerse these on a pan of water. That should get most of the ink off, and then it's a matter of squeezing the rest out of the pads. Yay. I figured putting them on a piece of tile and splashing it with water is a good way of removing the inks stuck in them. And if there's any doubt, the amount of ink these kinds of printers waste, well, most of that is my garbage refill stuff, so if there's any doubt the amount of ink these printers waste. Oh, sliding. Gotta go and intervene. Ow! And to think, millions of these printers wound up in the dump to let this amount of ink into the waste. And I think new old stock cartridges that never sold also wound up in the dump. To also introduce this much ink into the environment too. Because they just crush it. Shred it, whatever's most convenient. Well, the adhesive tapes on these are done anyway. It's one of those fibrous types. Can replace it later anyway. Yeah, look at that. Ideally, I want one of those. Also, be careful when splashing water into this. Ink will also splash all over the place. I'm saving the best for last with my procedure because it really looks like the stereotypical image of a first world developing citizen doing their job as ridiculously primitive as this. This is actually very effective, but careful, the sponge material seems to want to disintegrate. It seems to be made of some kind of paper material, but it can be squeezed, the ink. It can be squeezed out. Oh well, that's what happens when you use used tapes, but yeah, I've cleaned the base assembly up. It's pretty, I didn't video it, didn't record it because this is the usual splash water at it and get the ink stains off. And then I confirmed the pump thing works by putting distilled water in there and then running the pump. And when it kisses, the piston in here moves and then actually draws a small, around 0.22 grams of ink off the head. And then I cleaned off gunk that's stuck in these rollers. I have to wonder if there's actually rat feces that have been squished when I first tested it, when I found it at the surplus. Scratched most of that gunk off. And for this, I cleaned the gears off with water. Ink is water soluble after all. See how well this macros. Yep, not too well, not too good. Just loses focus like that. So, and then cleaned up the rollers, the slider, the rails for the carriage of excess grease. And need I tell you, working with ink printers is a pretty dirty prospect. No wonder why developed nations usually throw these things away once they get a bit dirty, because the labor to clean it is too expensive. Okay, suppose while I wait for the waste pads to dry, I'll just put this back together and show how to do it, because it's not exactly obvious. The phasing is, easiest way to phase this is to have the carriage out of the way in the unlocked position. Here. not immediately obvious how the lock assembly should go in. It's for the what was keeping the two assemblies from coming off is the locking arm. It has to go into a groove. There, that's enough. Sort of push it in there. And that should be in phase. Okay. Figure out how it works. The way it works is in the there's a cog, there's a wheel, there's a gear here. It's on it slides in and out. Unfortunately, I can't really show it unless I change angle. Let's see. So we can. There's only like 2 electric motors on this. The ASF equipped BJC-50 would have a third one for the sheet feeder, I imagine. Yeah, this thing cannot focus that close. Yeah, 3CCD man, it's not very good at close-ups. So yeah, there's a sliding gear here, which when the carriage moves in all the way to this side, it would push this gear and engage it in this from this lock position. In this position, where this bit of gears here is stuck to the gear, to this one in its disengaged position, it would prevent it from running, so it can run the paper, run the paper platen. When the carriage goes here, it'll push that gear in place out of that position and engage and free it. It will also raise the if it goes like that, it would allow the has to be this, something like that, and you can now go into a capped position, which is also the pump purge position. Utterly pointless and also out of shot a little bit, but it's quite awkward to do it with this kind of setup. Okay, I'll just end with the printer, but with printer put back together and doing a test print. But my black cartridge is actually empty because my previous batch was way too wet and it just drained away from the to the waste tank when it wasn't in use. And I imagine the same happens if you use a modern refill directly on this. Like, it would work, it would produce a really feathery and blotty, blurry output. It would print, but then the ink would just waste. Oh, one last thing. When cleaning out the waste pads, it ends up stretched like this, so it had to be crunched into place. It seems to be made of some kind of cardboard, but oh. So like Canon tells you to just replace the whole bottom assembly, but we don't have any access to any replacement parts, if any of them are still left in on the face of the planet Earth. So you know, just crunch them into place, and I think it's probably best to keep the middle pad a bit damp so that it would moisten these a bit and put it back into shape. Okay, all pieced together. There might be some ink that the print head can squirt spritzer a little, so we'll just put it into test mode 3. and see if something comes out. Make sure I haven't screwed up the ribbon to the print head. The operation of this inkjet is no different to modern printers, only that newer printers have a new optical tracking band, which would be a sort of, it's like a plastic strip that runs across, and then the print head actually tracks. But yeah, another problem that the printer is like really dirty is print defects. But this cartridge is low on ink, that's why it falls apart like that. Notice how it prints clean there and then it just turns to shit there. Yeah, that's what happens when there's not enough ink, or the ink left in it is a shit part of my crappy concoction. But it does show that it can still squirt spritzer. Yeah, making ink refills for an older printer is really difficult because you gotta get the pH right, you gotta get the viscosity right, you also gotta get the surface tension right. You can't just and also you gotta get the pH. Yeah, the pH is important because you might end up with, like, say for example, ammonia rich refills, or triethanol rich inks for newer printers. It tends to attack the polyamide ribbons. This way it looks like that over there. It tends to attack parts of the printer like that if there's too much triethanolamine. It's also kind of stupid to maintain a shitty old printer, because you could just take a modern, like a netter, and then usually they can accept PostScript. Do is set up a legacy Samba server and then create a printer that points to that modern Epson or Brother or Canon that will accept raw PostScript delivered over TCP/IP. Cups can do that. Just share that, relay that printer to a legacy Samba share, and then a shitty Windows 95 machine can print on, say, an Epson 6290. But I had some issues with getting the pages lined up, the print lined up on that. You have to play around with the offset. But I'd argue it's not as fun as doing something as stupid as this, where I maintain this piece of shit and make refills for this piece of shit. But then having an old inkjet printer that still works is a nice tool to have when someone complains that their 1 year, not even a year old inkjet printer could no longer print anymore, and then this piece of shit can still print. So yeah, I guess that's about it for this LameJunk video. If it's of any use or not,